One, two, one, two. One, two, one, two. One, two, one, two.
Mic check, mic check. Mic check, mic check. Yep. I'm getting the green bar now. No,
All right.
he'd go with the military time.
Okay. Good morning and welcome. This is oversight hearing of the Subcommittee on Disability Assistance and Memorial Affairs will now come to order. Veterans who apply for compensation may receive a disability exam. The purpose of the examination is to determine if the veteran has a disability, the extent of the disability, and whether the disability is linked to his or her military service. In other words, the medical evaluation is a key part of the VA exam process, and we have an obligation to ensure that these exams are completed accurately and within a responsible amount of time. Some people may be surprised to learn that the disability exam may not be performed by the VA employee. In the past years, VA has been using independent vendors to carry out these exams. From January 1, 2017 to April 2018, contractors performed about 1 million exams, or about half of all disability exams. And in FY 2017 and FY 2018, VA actually paid contractors $639 million and $919 million, respectively. So given how important disability exams are, I was very concerned when the GAO recently released a report that found serious gaps in the way that VA is overseeing contract examiners. As a businessman, I know that you have to stay on top of contractors to ensure that the program is working as well as it should. One of the biggest concerns is that most contractors are not meeting the VA's quality goal of 92% accuracy. In fact, GAO reports that quality scores for contract rating ranging from only 62% to 92%. Of course, that raises the question of whether veterans are getting correct decisions if the exams are not accurate. GAO also says that VA does not have a way to verify whether or not contractors are taking the required training, which may explain why the quality of exams is so low. Now, that isn't to say that the vendors wouldn't welcome feedback on how they can improve service to veterans. I'm also frustrated that GAO found that the VBA could not accurately measure whether contractors are meeting timelessness goals. Providing exams within a reasonable time frame is very important to the compensation claims process. Unnecessary delays in scheduling exams force veterans to wait longer for decisions and add to the backlog. According to the VA, it did not have the staffing and IT needed to effectively oversee the program. I'm concerned that the VA chose to expand a potentially $6.8 billion program without having the necessary controls in place to hold the vendors accountable. The contract specifically, financial incentives or penalties for the vendors based on their performance. However, last year, VA did not have the resources required to timely verify the contractor's invoices for accuracy, much less quality. And it's unfair for veterans and taxpayers to pay the price of a potentially mismanaged program. That being said, we don't know what this is in fact a mismanaged program. The issue is, if this program is mismanaged, the issue is the VA does not have the data that Congress needs to make such a determination. I know the VA set up an exam program office to improve oversight of contractors. I'm interested in learning more about how this office will help improve contract exams, as well as getting an update on the VA's progress in implementing GAO's recommendations. Again, I want to thank everyone for being here. Now I would like to turn to our ranking member for any opening statement she might have. Ms. Sesti.
Thank you, Chairman Bost. And I want to thank you very much for calling this hearing today and for taking the lead in requesting the GAO report, which is the basis for this oversight hearing of the VA's contract medical examination program. Well before I joined this committee, I was involved with improving the medical evaluation system used by the VA to determine a fair level of compensation for veterans who are injured or made ill as a result of their military service. I heard often from veterans in my home state of Connecticut that their lack of faith in the medical evaluations they received was a major reason why they filed appeals. In the past, veterans would tell me that the outside doctors who they saw for the evaluation sometimes didn't appear to have the necessary understanding of their illness or injury to make a valid medical determination. And they also described a feeling of being, frankly, pushed around by the bureaucracy. For example, people were sent from rural Connecticut to New York City for an exam which fit within the VA's mileage criteria, but didn't take into account the transportation difficulties for an elderly World War II veteran in rural Connecticut to make it in the middle of winter for an exam. Others had the experience of having the 3 required notification phone calls all received on the exact same day to provide them notice of when their exam is. Again, those are the sorts of frustrations that we received. Over the last couple of years, VBA has worked to create a new system that veterans can have more faith in. In order to get the exams they need to support their claims, the use of outside contractors has increased to the point that about 50% of all of the medical exams are being done by outside contractors at this point. We applaud the progress VBA has made in timeliness and efforts towards improved quality, and I invite the program directors here today to describe that progress, especially in timeliness. Nevertheless, the GAO findings that the training doctors are supposed to receive is not always verified independently concerns me. I'm also concerned about whether veterans' travel reimbursements are being tracked and accounted for by VBA. This is a particularly an issue we have heard about involving contract exams and whether those reimbursements actually ever reach the veterans as intended. And of course, this subcommittee is always concerned that the IT infrastructure necessary for this key element of the disability compensation claims process is up and functioning well. So while we all applaud VBA's progress, it's our job to ensure that the system is being managed to a standard that earns veterans' trust and doesn't leave them feeling as if they are a profit center for outside contractors. They should be treated as heroes. So thank you to our witnesses for their commitment to veterans and for being here on this snowy morning, which we did not all anticipate. I look forward to hearing your testimony, and with that, I yield back.
Thank you. I also want to be here. I want to welcome full committee chairman Phil Rowe to this hearing. Chairman Rowe, would you like to say a few words? Or?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Esty for holding the hearing. I appreciate that. And one of the priorities as chairman of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs is ensuring that our nation's veterans receive timely and accurate compensation decisions. Timely and accurate disability exams are a key input into those decisions. Some of you may not know that in 1996, Congress approved the use of contract examiners to allow VHA to focus more on its resources of treating patients and to expedite the scheduling of disability exams. And that's to be commended because the VA is short-staffed now, so I think that was probably a good move. As Chairman Bost pointed out in his statement, since Congress originally authorized the pilot program, the Department has dramatically expanded both the size and cost of the program. While it's important for VA to schedule examinations in a timely manner, it's equally important that contract examiners are rendering accurate and consistent medical opinions. For these reasons, when I first came on as chairman of the full committee, I immediately requested the GAO investigate whether VA is effectively overseeing contract exams. When I reviewed the report, I was incredibly frustrated to learn that VA does not have procedures in place to monitor a program that is vital to providing the medical information needed to decide veteran claims. Moreover, over the last 2 fiscal years, the contract exam program cost almost $1.6 billion, and the VA cannot timely verify if contractors are charging the correct amount. As a physician, I know that my medical practice would not have succeeded if I were unaware of whether my patients were receiving quality and timely care. Unfortunately, VA hasn't been collecting the information necessary to assess whether the contract exams are satisfactory and to hold the vendors accountable if not. Congress needs this information to determine if the contract examiners are effectively serving veterans and to ensure that the program is a wise use of taxpayer funding. Today, I'm interested in hearing how the VA is addressing the GAO's recommendations to improve how VA evaluates contractor performance. For example, GAO suggested that VA develop and implement a plan for how it will use EMS to oversee the contractors. I'm looking forward to hearing from VA about how the department intends to use EMS in a way that will benefit veterans while holding vendors responsible for any delay or inadequate exams. Additionally, I'm concerned by GAO's findings that VA does not monitor the adequacy of its training for medical examiners. If VA's training is not sufficient, then examiners may render an inaccurate medical opinion, which could result in a rater denying a veteran's claim. Ultimately, I am committed to ensuring that the men and women who served our country receive the benefits that they've earned, and I'm looking forward to hearing from today's witnesses about ways to improve VA's oversight of contract exams. And again, Chairman Boss, I appreciate holding this hearing, and I yield back my time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to welcome all the witnesses who joined us here this morning, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here. Joining us from the VA is Ms. Margarita Devlin, who is the Principal Deputy Undersecretary for Benefits. She is accompanied by Ms. Beth Murphy, the Director of Compensation Services for VBA, also with Ms. Mary Glenn, the Deputy Director of Compensation Services for the VBA, and Mr. Philip Christie, the Deputy Executive Director of the OALC. Also joining us today is Ms. Liz Curda, the Director of Education, Workforce, and Income Security Team for GAO. We want to welcome all of you, and I want to remind the witnesses that your complete written statement will be entered into the hearing record. I'm going to make sure. Ms. Curda, I did that twice to you. I apologize. You are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Boss, Ranking Member Esty, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me to discuss GAO's findings on VBA's oversight of its contracted examiners. In addition to VHA physicians, VBA relies on private physicians via contracts to examine veterans who claim benefits for a service-connected disability. Between 2012 and 2017, the number of exams completed by contracted examiners more than tripled to about 600,000 and currently accounts for about half of all exams. All told, VBA awarded 5 private firms contracts that are worth up to $6.8 billion over 5 years. Today, I will highlight the findings and recommendations from our recently issued report in 3 areas. First, what is known about the quality and timeliness of VBA contracted exams. Second, the extent to which VBA monitors contractors' performance. And third, how VBA ensures that its contractors provide qualified and well-trained examiners. Regarding the first area, VBA lacked accurate and complete information on whether contractors are meeting the agency's quality and timeliness targets. As of last summer, VBA staff had not completed reviews of the quality of the contracted exams for the latter half of 2017. Of those that VBA had completed, the agency reported that almost all contractors missed VBA's quality target of 92% in the first half of calendar year 2017, with scores ranging from 62 to 92%. Further, VBA could not accurately assess the timeliness of the contracted exams. Per the contracts, VBA should measure timeliness as the amount of time it takes for a contractor to complete and submit the initial exam report and exclude any time taken to make corrections. However, VBA's systems did not accurately capture the date that corrected exams were initially reported. Although the timeliness data could not be used to assess contractor compliance, we analyzed the data on all contracted exams completed between February 2017 and January 2018, including the corrected ones. We found that about half of the exams completed were done within the general 20-day target, while the other half exceeded 20 days and 12% took more than twice as long to complete. VBA officials told us they plan to hire additional staff by the end of fiscal year 2018 to complete the remaining quality reviews. In addition, VBA officials said their new information system would more accurately track contractor timeliness. However, at the time of our review, the system was not yet producing accurate data. Regarding the second area on monitoring contractors, VBA identified and addressed some contractor issues, such as delays in completing specific exams. However, VBA lacked adequate data and plans for overseeing contractors' overall performance. For example, without sufficient quality and timeliness information, VBA could not apply financial penalties for exams needing correction or for contractor performance that did not meet timeliness or quality targets. Further, VBA has not conducted any comprehensive analyses that would allow it to identify and address higher-level trends and program-wide challenges. For example, such analyses could identify challenges in conducting exams across different contractors, geographic regions, exam types, or other relevant factors. To address these issues, we recommended that VBA develop and implement a plan for using data from the new exam management system to regularly monitor contractor performance. We also recommended that VBA regularly assess aggregate performance data, higher-level trends, and program-wide challenges. VA agreed with these recommendations. Finally, regarding examiner qualifications, we found VBA had systems in place to check that examiners had proper credentials, such as licenses, to perform exams. However, VBA lacked information it needed to verify that contracted examiners had taken required training. Instead, the contractors self-reported this information. VBA also lacked plans to evaluate the quality of the training it provided to examiners to ensure that they are able to provide high-quality exams and reports. This is particularly problematic given the low-quality scores VBA gave to many of the contractors. To address this, we recommended that VBA implement a way to verify that contracted examiners have completed required training. We also recommended VBA assess the effectiveness of its training and make improvements as needed. VA agreed with our recommendations. In summary, we found several gaps in the information VBA needs to effectively manage and oversee contract performance. As VA continues to rely on contracted examiners, it is important that the agency is well positioned to carry out effective oversight of contractors to help ensure that veterans receive high quality and timely exams and contractors are paid correctly. This concludes my prepared statement, and I will be happy to address the subcommittee's questions.
Thank you, Ms. Curtin. Ms. Devlin, this is your first time testifying before the subcommittee, and we thank you for being here, and you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Boston, Ranking Member Esty, and members of the committee. We appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you about our Contract Medical Disability Examination Program, or MDE. I'd like to take a moment to just provide an overview of our MDE program. VBA requests a disability exam or a medical opinion when necessary to adjudicate a disability claim for disability or pension, commonly referred to as CMP exams. For decades, VA relied only on VHA to provide these exams. Then in 1996, as you mentioned, Congress provided VA the authority to contract exams using the mandatory fund. VA began using this authority in 1998, which was originally limited to 10 regional offices. After 16 years, the statutory authority was extended to 12 regional offices in fiscal year 2015, 15 and 2016, and as many regional offices as the Secretary deemed necessary starting in fiscal year 17. Claims processors at VBA's 56 regional offices now can use an online tool enabled by real-time data to assess by exam type if VHA has the capacity to conduct the exam, and if not, to direct that exam to a contract vendor. VBA's current contract is structured in 5 districts across the continental United States with 2 vendors per district. There's also an overseas district served by 1 vendor, and an additional district with 1 vendor serving our transitioning service members who go through our pre-discharge programs such as Benefits Delivery at Discharge, or BDD, and Integrated Disability Evaluation System, or IDES. VBA's contract vendors have also begun conducting exams for incarcerated veterans where the prison systems will allow us in. Over 1.3 million veterans or service members received CMP exams in fiscal year 17, with vendors fulfilling more than 45% of those requests. For fiscal year 18, vendors performed nearly 60% of the 1.4 million exam requests completed. This included more than 14,000 veterans and service members overseas, where VHA has no footprint, and our contract vendors are the only method to provide this service. The total cost over the last 2 fiscal years for contract vendor exams, including the ancillary support contracts, were approximately $765 million in fiscal year 17 and $896 million in fiscal year 18. Each exam request can contain one or more disability benefits questionnaires, or DBQs. The average number of DBQs per exam request is between 3 and 4. After the award of VBA's contract in 2016, there were multiple protests and an appeal of the award in the 5 continental U.S. districts, followed by contractual ramp-up time periods. Based on these events, the evaluation period for Districts 1 through 5 did not begin until September 27th of 2017. To ensure seamless service to veterans, VBA relied on a series of bridge contracts as necessary to avoid any gap in service. VBA anticipates continuing to use these bridge contracts until December of 2018. Execution of the current MDE contracts was impacted by many unforeseen challenges, including the award protests I just mentioned, one non-performing vendor who is no longer working under contract for VBA, and system limitations for managing exam requests. These issues have since been resolved. Also, VBA worked with our industry partners to modify the contracts more than 100 times to enhance service delivery to veterans and service members. VBA concurs with the recommendations in the report released this week by the Government Accountability Office. As stated in the report, GAO reviewed timeliness and quality data through February of 2018. The GAO findings validate the issues VBA was already working on, and VBA has already implemented many improvements. For example, our exam management system is fully operational, and we're on track to finish all of our quality reviews. Also, I'm pleased to announce that the contracting officer is sending out today, for signature and award, the new contracts for Districts 1 through 5 with updated terms based on all the lessons we've learned and our current business needs. VBA appreciates the authority provided by Congress to obtain contract exams to supplement VHA's capabilities. The MDE program enabled VBA to obtain the necessary evidence in deciding 1.4 million disability rating claims in fiscal year 18 in an average of under 100 days processing time with 95% quality. This would not have been possible if we had to rely only on VHA's capacity. VBA is committed to continuous improvement of the MDE program. We know how important it is to get this right for veterans. Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, this concludes my statement. My colleagues and I welcome any questions that you have.
Thank you. And hit that right on, for just your first time, you hit it right on 5 minutes. That was really good. I'm going to start with questioning. I'm going to allow myself 5 minutes if I can. Ms. Curta, please provide your perspective on the extent to which VBA was adequately prepared to manage and oversee the contract exam program once the contracts were put into place in the summer of 2017.
Overall, we found that VBA was not prepared to manage the contractors and provide adequate oversight at the time. Early on, we found that some contractors did not have the capacity to do the exams that were assigned to them and had to be reassigned. There were, as I mentioned earlier, some problems with the quality of the exams, and the systems that VBA was using at the time could not provide accurate timeliness information, which is necessary to execute and monitor the contracts. And some of the causal factors I mentioned in my oral statement, that there were an inadequate number of staff in the program management office to oversee the contracts, both in terms of quality reviewers and contractor officer representatives. And as I mentioned, the system at the time was not producing accurate timeliness data.
Ms. Devlin, has VA exercised any fiscal incentives or penalties to contractors based on their quality or timeliness performance?
We have not.
Okay. Can you tell us if there are any new plans in place to, first off, why not?
I'll defer to our acquisition colleague here to answer that.
Hi, good morning. To pick at that, the one contractor that did not perform, we did go through a settlement to mitigate the non-performance there, but no incentives or de-incentives were made. We did do the settlement to make sure that the work that needed to be done that they did not do was picked up by the other contractors, and they were required to pay that amount to make sure that that work could be done. Once those other contractors picked up, The contractor did not perform, was just through the settlement, no more work was provided to them, and that contract ended for them.
So, Mr. Christie or Ms. Devlin, either one. So what are our plans in the future to make sure that we actually have penalties and have those things in place to make sure they're doing the timeliness and all of the things that are required under their contract?
I'll answer from the procurement side very specifically. So both the current contracts and the ones that are being awarded this morning have incentives and de-incentives in them for timeliness and quality. The procurement vehicle itself, the contract, has that built into it. I'll defer now to the program, and I think they're going to talk to you about the things that have gotten better and improved over the last year, and I think that's been a good teaming arrangement actually between industry, program, and the procurement folks, and go ahead, I'll let you finish the good news story there.
Yes, thank you for the question. First of all, we are almost caught up on our quality reviews and have submitted many of them to the acquisition office for review. Secondly, I'd like to point out that while we had not submitted those reports at the time of the GAO report, we had been conducting reviews and having feedback sessions with our contractors on a regular basis. We issue memorandum with guidance memos on a routine basis based on lessons learned, based on the quality reviews that we've done. In addition, with the new contract, we were able to staff up our business office to the 17 people. We've got 2 left to get on board so that we can conduct our quality reviews in a timely manner and get any feedback to the contracting office as quickly as we can.
Just real quick, because I'm going to be running out of time, I'm afraid, but what are you doing as far as from here on out to do the proper audits to make sure that we know and you know that the contractor's doing everything they're supposed to be doing?
We actually have another contract that comes in and does invoice audits as well. And in addition to those, because we are now staffed appropriately to conduct the quality reviews, we will do those quality reviews in a timely manner and get them to the contracting office and then take any actions both related to incentives or disincentives in a timely manner. And I'd like to, if it's okay, allow my colleagues to elaborate.
Sir, I just wanted to add that our new exam management system, EMS, which is now functional, has that automatic invoicing, auditing built in so that we are able to do a better job going forward validating the invoices.
I'm out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and yield to the ranking member. 5 minutes.
Thank you, and I want to thank the witnesses for joining us here today. Quick question for Ms. Devlin. Do you feel with 17 full-time equivalents who are now about to be onboarded, will that be a sufficient number to do the kind of oversight and review that we need? Do you believe that's a sufficient number?
Yes, based on our estimates, we believe it is.
All right. I think we'll be revisiting that in 6 months' time to verify if, in fact, it is, because we all want to be providing the resources necessary. If that proves not to be, then we need to know that and not wait for another GAO report. I'm interested I'm looking at the testimony that we received today about concerns about this process. So I want to know if the VSOs are part of that feedback loop. There ought to be continuous improvement in this process on both timeliness and quality. And the people on the front lines, you have 17 full-time equivalents who are supervising the program. We have thousands, probably tens of thousands of VSOs around the country. They can and should be eyes and ears about what's going on. How are they involved with you in ensuring that you are getting on-the-ground feedback about timeliness and quality?
That's a great question. We collaborate with our VSO partners regularly, and on this topic as well as other topics. We have quarterly training sessions with our VSO where we talk to them about various initiatives, and we've talked to them about the MDE program in particular to make sure that we are explaining to them where we are in the process and to get feedback from them about what they are hearing on the ground. In addition to the quarterly training sessions, we have regular meetings with the Undersecretary for Benefits and VSOs, as well as other meetings at the staff level.
Thank you. I want to, again, because to highlight this from the written testimony today, the VFW listed 5 major concerns they're still seeing. Late notification of exams, and I mentioned that. Lack of options for veterans to reschedule exams. That can be important depending on health, transportation, weather. Lack of availability of adequate examiners with reasonable distance from the veteran. No adequate review of the veteran's claim file prior to the exam. I can tell you personally, I've heard about that from folks in my district, that they did not get a review sufficiently ahead of time, and inadequate time for providers due to the volume and the pressure and turnaround time. So those are the specific issues we're concerned about, and that goes to the totality of the experience. I have a specific question, though, on the 20-day within the system, 30-day outside of the system timeliness criteria. We want it to be timely, but even more important, it has to be accurate. If it's not accurate, people are going to file claims, and they should. That will slow down the whole system, gum up the works, cost money, and lead, most importantly, to veterans not trusting the results. So what do you feel that those are reasonable time goals? And if not, how are we going to make a determination? Because we are hearing somewhat anecdotally. I can say I am hearing from VSOs. They do not want to be a slave to that 20 or 30-day time period. So I want to make sure we're not measuring the wrong metrics and losing something more important, which is faith and quality in the system.
Thank you for that question. I'd like to start and then allow my colleagues to elaborate. We take quality very seriously, and as I indicated, our disability claims quality is at 95% for the end of the fiscal year, and of course that the disability exams are part of that process. So I feel confident in the quality of our disability claims decisions. With respect to the quality of the exams, I did want to point out that when we review for quality, we review a combination of technical accuracy and administrative accuracy. So when you look at the statistics provided in the GAO report, I would just like to point out that some of that includes errors based on administrative procedures. For example, if the provider failed to put their license number on the DBQ or on the report, or if they failed to check a box of something that's administrative and not related to the disability exam itself. Those are counted as errors as well and will be reflected in the scores. We do take quality very, very seriously. I'll allow my colleagues to discuss the 20-day time frame.
I did want to elaborate on a couple of the points you made. I saw in the VFW testimony, I'm pleased to say that they are hearing frequent positive comments about the contract. And it's important to note they are a key piece of our oversight. They are partners with us. Mary and I meet with them regularly, and we always emphasize that it's important that if they hear individual specific situations of the nature you described, we want to hear about that. And they do funnel those to us, and we follow up on every single one. As far as the timeliness goals, I understand your concern, and we share that concern. We want to make sure we're doing not only a timely job, but also a quality job, because that's what's important, and that's how we best serve veterans. We've taken that into account. I think another thing that's important going forward is that under this new contract, we have done the research and the homework, done the analysis, including with VHA partners, on how better to balance rural and urban areas within the districts, which will enable the vendors to set up a healthier infrastructure footprint, and then that can help them meet the timeliness measures as well.
Thank you, and I'm over time. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To follow along with what Ms. Esty was talking about, I would like to know how you, if I'm doing the disability claim for VA, how do you train me? And then how do you assess that I'm doing a quality exam?
Yes, sir. We use the same training methods that VHA does. We use the same training materials that they do. We also have an additional training piece.
I mean, do I do an online class? You come to my office, or what do you do?
It has been somewhat of both of those things. We have used train the trainer method, where we pulled the vendors' training officers together in one location and train them. We have online materials that they use. So we use whatever training method works and makes sense for whatever the topic is.
And then to measure the quality, how do you do that? And I agree with Ms. Devlin, if you've missed checking a box, that's not really an issue about the quality exam that you gave. And I do understand why the VA needs help to evaluate 1.4 million claims. You just don't have the internal capacity to do that. I don't think. You barely have 35% of the health care the VA provides outside now. I know they don't have the capacity to see all those patients in addition.
So, sir, when we do our quality reviews, if you're talking about how do we maintain quality for specific...
Yeah, how would you evaluate me to know that
yes,
I'm providing quality care?
We when we do our quality reviews, if we notice that there is one specific doctor or one specific vendor that continues to have problems, and this is something that we do track, we notify the vendors. And
Well, what's a problem? And that's what I don't, when you say that, what does that mean?
that they did not fill out the form correctly.
Okay.
They gave inadequate information, that whatever the DBQ, the Disability Benefits Questionnaire that they completed was not adequate for rating purposes.
Okay. The other thing, I guess, once again, we're back to IT. And anecdotally, as Ms. Esty was talking about, I ran into a man on Veterans Day, and you run into a lot of veterans on Veterans Day, but this fellow was asked to go get a hearing exam, 2 hours drive up into Southwest Virginia for his disability claim, when we have one of the best hearing departments right there in Johnson City at Mountain Home Medical Center. He finally got it fixed where he didn't have to drive essentially 4 hours to get this disability. Those are the kind of things I think that people also get upset about, is when they know they can have the exam right there if they can, instead of going 2 hours. And I think if I were a veteran and I were given the option, hey, you can wait a month and get seen here locally, or you can drive in 2 weeks, 2 hours one way, I just wait a couple of weeks. I haven't been able to hear for 30 years, so why would I care about 2 more weeks? So those are the kind of common sense things I think that we need to do. The other question I want to ask, and this is one that goes to not just this particular part of VA, but we had a hearing yesterday. We're going to have another one on the GI Bill later today. Is that why would you expand this to all, other than I understand the need to get these done, to all 56 ROs when you didn't have the IT to evaluate what GAO said? Why would you expand a program until you had the systems in place to adequately see if I'm doing it in a timely fashion and I'm doing quality work? Why would you do that?
So, great question, sir. Mary and I came onto this program in about the middle of 2016, and the plans were in place for the IT infrastructure and the program requirements going forward. There was a protest to the original award that happened in March 2016, and it was over a year that we were on a stop work order. During that time frame, we were anticipating that this system would be built out and we would be testing with those vendors. So that stop work order hindered our ability to work with these vendors to test adequately and get the system on track on time. So there were some delays for that reason. We have ramped up, worked with those vendors who have been great partners to us, and we are in place now going forward to be able to use that system effectively.
So you think you can monitor what you need to monitor going forward? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And I heard also that you feel like by the end of the year you'll have the staff and the IT. So as Ms. Esty said, 6 months from now we come and have this hearing again. We're not going to hear the same thing again. I want that on record. We're correct in hearing that?
That is correct.
Okay, I'll yield back.
Mr. Lamb, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a question I think for anyone from the VA. In Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, near where I'm from, our VBA is a primary site for processing claims from overseas. And I was just hoping you could fill me in a little bit on how monitoring and overseeing the contractors for contracts that do overseas claims might be different, or any of the specific issues you've seen there.
We do work very closely with the vendor who has the overseas contract, and as far as the monitoring goes, they are still held to quality and timeliness standards, which are written into the contract. We also receive feedback from our VSO partners and from the Pittsburgh regional office, as well as anybody else who comes to VA and has a problem. As far as I know, our overseas operations have been in place, and in fact, we added 6 more additional sites in FY19.
And Congressman, if I could add, just so happens about 10 years ago, I was director of the Pittsburgh regional office, and I know firsthand the struggles that we had at that time in getting exams done overseas. We would work with VHA, embassies, State Department to try to get some solution for exams overseas, and it was very difficult. Last year we did about 7,000, almost 8,000 exams through the contract for overseas veterans, and this year it's been about 14,000. So it really is a solution we've never had before.
So you're saying that the use of contractors recently has made that easier for the overseas
Absolutely.
exams? Okay.
The timeliness is improved. We're not struggling and looking for alternative solutions, like next best solutions. We are actually being examined by people who know how to do these exams.
Do you, and this is Ms. Curta too, you can answer this, I don't know who would know, but have you noticed, is the performance of the contractors doing overseas examinations any better or worse when it comes to quality and timeliness? Was that something you all looked at? Or?
In terms of timeliness, at the time of our review, there were similar issues as the other domestic districts on the quality part of it. Yeah, they had slightly higher scores.
Okay. Now, when it comes to having VA doctors do the exams, you know, in a community like ours, we're lucky to have 2 VA hospitals that are in pretty close proximity to a lot of people, so that would be kind of the best option. Would you agree that the VA doctors, because of their skills, their training, their experience, and also just their awareness of veteran culture and personality and the experience, would you agree that they tend to be a better option than the contractors themselves?
I think with thousands, 8,000 examiners on the contract side and with several hundred or 1,000 on the VHA side, that's difficult to answer just as a generality. I know that VHA is very committed in its mission, and our vendors are committed in their mission as well. We use the same training materials, as Mary said earlier. We do consult with VHA regularly to help with our exams. So there is a good partnership there.
As far as making sure that the contractors have the same kind of cultural awareness as the VA doctors, are they VA doctors that are providing the training, or have you contracted out the training as well?
One of the pieces that is different for the vendor training as opposed to VHA training is we provide and we have the vendors familiarize all of their subcontractors with VA culture, with our benefits. They go through a whole training program about VA benefits and the importance of serving veterans and how we are all committed to making sure that veterans get accurate and timely examinations in order for their claims to be processed.
Okay, but my question is, who is training the person who does the exam? Is it a VA doctor, or is a contractor doing the training of another contractor?
The contractor is doing a training with another contractor, usually using VA materials.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
And if I could add, very specifically, we expanded our contract in the last year or so that vendors could help do medical opinions for Camp Lejeune contaminated water cases. We specifically had the VHA folks come with us and train the examiners for those vendors.
Gentleman, yield back. Thank you. Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, Ms. Murphy, you said that there were plans in place with an effective date for the implementation of these contracts. But you also said that you all knew prior to that implementation date that the IT system wasn't ready. Then why did you all go forward with this?
So that was a little before my time. I'm not up to speed on all of the decisions and the analysis that happened ahead of time. I can only speak to what Mary and I observed when we took our positions and going forward. So we just made sure that every twist and turn that hit us with the protests, with the systems, with the staffing, that we address that and move forward.
Ms. Curta, could you answer that? I mean, why did they move forward when the IT system wasn't ready?
I don't have an explanation because we got our information from Beth, so she wasn't there, so we don't know prior to that.
Can anybody answer that question?
I think to the best of my knowledge, it was the fact that there was a plan in place that they would synchronize the release of the original contract with the system And then because of the protests and the stop work orders so that we couldn't engage with the contractors for building that out and testing, it delayed things by about a year. And then once the protests and the appeal period were over, we're into June 2017. Then we had the ramp up of 90 days for the new vendors. It was the beginning of FY18 before we were up and ready to start measuring.
It still makes no sense. Still absolutely makes no sense. When you didn't have the systems, the adequate systems in place that brought us to this situation today, that you still move forward. And nobody can answer, really give an adequate answer as to why.
Well, I think it's important to remember that VHA did not have the internal capacity to do these exams in a timely manner. We're here to serve veterans in a timely and quality way, and these contracts have been in place for 20 years. We had experience with this, and we were working through the ramp up the best we could. There were a lot of lessons learned during that ramp up period of this new contract, and the protests are behind us. The systems are in place. The staffing is in place. We're well poised to do this appropriately going forward.
Well, you haven't done it appropriately yet. I yield back.
Thank you. Mrs. Radwagen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Ms. Devlin. As you know, VA has been using contract exams since 1998. Now, I realize that you only came on board in 2016, but do you have any idea why VA waited until 2016 to establish a contract exam office?
Thank you. I actually have been in the VA for 23 years, but in my current position since May of this year. I cannot answer to the decisions going back multiple years. What I can tell you, though, is that it was only, I believe, in 2017 that we received the authority to conduct contract exams in all regional offices. Up until then, it was merely a pilot program. And I also want to kind of put some context around the IT system. When developing an IT system that is going to be used with contractors of any type, we would build with our IT folks the preliminary product, but the key ingredient is enabling the contract vendor to, through their IT systems, connect to ours. The only way to fully sort of complete the system is to have contract vendors in place who help us test. And so that was the delay that was described by Ms. Murphy as to why we didn't have the systems in place. We had the preliminary IT development complete, but the inability to interact with our vendors to do the testing did not enable us to finish that last step.
So when EMS was deployed, it was not fully interoperable with the contractor's IT systems.
That's correct.
How many claims were affected by this issue? Ms. Devlin.
As I understand it, no claims were affected directly. Any exams that did not go to the contract vendor correctly were pulled back and manually reassigned to another contract vendor. The system was basically getting exam requests stuck when we first deployed, and we were manually unsticking those exam requests so that the veteran did not suffer because the exam would still be completed and they would get their rating decision completed.
So what short and long-term steps are you taking to ensure that exams are not getting stuck in EMS? You may have partially answered it already, but Ms. Devlin?
We've made multiple fixes to the system with our IT partners. In fact, all of the fixes to the system that have been completed to date have tested well, and we've been able to point forward, assure that no other exams will be stuck. Those problems have been fixed. We still have a few exams in the system that we are manually rerouting, but point forward, the system is now fixed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. We're going to go a second round of questions because there's some things I feel like we really need to get to that need to be on record and vitally important to this issue. And so I want to tell the members that if they have other questions, that we'll get that other time. Let me go back. Whenever we were talking about the audit, and what could be done. And Mr. Christie, this is specifically to you, what resources realistically available to the VA, and if the VA finds that as a result of the audit, the department was overcharged, given that those at the MSLA invoices have already been paid, what are the options to draw back on that overpayment if they're there?
Right, and so with these audits, the fact pattern will really tell a story, and with our legal counsel, we'll look at that. It's kind of a tough situation to give you exact details without actually having the facts so that we could work through that with our legal counsel. As we talked about yesterday, as the reports are now starting to come in and we start looking at that data, I think there will be challenges on the government side for the work that was already paid for in the previous submittals. But there are remedies there that we could explore, but we are still trying to adjudicate that data.
And that's the problem when we're all asking the questions, and why and I know it happened before you were there. I understand that. But there's two things really that are vitally important. One is the timeliness and the quality of the exam. But also we have a fiduciary duty. And that fiduciary duty, as all falls on you, and that is that if all of a sudden we continued to let a train run down the track without the ability to implement the drawbacks and or audit of those people who are private contractors providing a service. And now we're all of a sudden coming back later, and the legal problems we're going to have to try to get back the money that the taxpayers gave, and gave probably in a situation where the people weren't doing their job correctly.
This will be a challenge. The good news, as was mentioned this morning, new awards are literally taking place this morning. The new EMS system and the hiring and the oversight. Myself and Mary had very strong conversations the last few days about the new contracts being awarded this morning and the oversight of that, and to the 6-month leap forward, and we come back here and present the data that went on record here earlier. We all believe we're in a really good spot going forward. I can't pull back what happened, and there will be challenges from the data that we get if it's not favorable.
And the problem we all have as members of Congress is the fact that we go back and talk to our constituents, and then we have to answer to them for where our levels of bureaucracy have failed, where they should have never been put in the position where they were going to fail in the first place when they told us they could do it. My hope is, Ms. Devlin, when we come back, that in 6 months your statement is correct and that this will be operating correctly. With that, I'm going to yield to Ranking Member Ms. Esty and see for 5 more minutes.
Thank you very much. So 2 things I want to actually start where my friend, the Chairman Bost, ended. I want clarity on what is different now. Number one, we've got a better oversight system in place with the exam management system, right? With EMS, we've got that in place. But I want clarity, and I think that sounds like you, Mr. Christie. Is the language different in the new contracts that specifically provides for authority and or for authority for either clawback or withholding until we guarantee? Is the language different than it was in previous contracts?
So the procurement vehicles that are in place today and being awarded today are very similar in nature. There's some nuances maybe on percentages and for the incentives and decentives. A lot of this is going to come back to the programmatics of making sure that we have the proper oversight that was not at its best in the previous versions of these contracts. And so I am going to ask the help from the program here when we talk about the guarantees on EMS. I know from my perspective in the procurement world, we have the CORs that all have been appointed, properly trained, to the right level of talent and skill set, and the follow-on people that support those CORs are in place from a procurement contracting perspective. Those are ready to go, signed before the awards were even made. That was all in place. I will default a little bit back to EMS and the staffing levels to the VBA here.
All right, so then what I'm hearing is this was not an issue of not having authority on the contracts. This was an issue of not having the data or not having the data in a timely fashion that put you in a position to have enforcement. So what we want to know is, will you now have the data? Will you now be getting it in a timely fashion so that you can guarantee that that oversight is happening? sufficiently rapidly that you can put a stop to payments if it turns out people are failing on, grotesquely failing on timeliness and failing on quality? Is that, and what I'm hearing is you're saying yes, but I want that on the record. Are you saying yes, you believe you will now have the data to make timely determinations to activate the clauses that were already there in the contracts, which you chose not to activate because it was so far late in time, is what I'm hearing, and you needed that money to get them to pay somebody else to do the work they didn't do. Is that correct?
I will answer for that. So yes, ma'am, to your question about are we equipped now to perform the oversight that we need to perform, we are. We have the exam management system, which is functional and ready to provide us all the data we need. We are now also staffed. We have our last 2 people reporting soon to get the full 17 staff in the office so that we can conduct quality reviews in a timely manner and get them turned into the acquisition professionals so that if action is necessary with our contractors, they can take those actions accordingly. The other thing I just wanted to, again, reiterate for the record is that our quality reviews and the feedback that we've been giving to our contractors does not reflect any egregious issues that we haven't been able to, any small issues that we've been able to deal with, as Mary Glenn indicated, we've been able to deal with on the spot. But we do have everything in place with this new contract to start fresh with all the data that we need and all the oversight capabilities. And if I've missed anything, Ms. Murphy will add.
I do want to add that the quality review piece that we've talked about is part of a larger staff of 84 who are dedicated to this mission. Among our comp service staff, who are all very talented, these are some of the hardest working folks. And the highly manual reporting and redirecting of work and monitoring that was caused by our non-performing vendor last year in 4 of our 5 districts in the U.S. was very challenging. So it was unexpectedly taking more bandwidth to manage this from the staff we had than we anticipated.
All right, well, thank you. It's important to get that on the record so we all have the same understanding of what the challenges were and the same assurance going forward. The last thing I want to flag, which I mentioned in my opening, was about the travel reimbursements. And so that people understand there's a different travel reimbursement system that is used for contract exams. And I think it's important, and 4 of the 5 of you were at the table with me yesterday in my office. I think it is very important that you put in place a system to verify that when contractors receive reimbursement for the VA for having paid travel reimbursements, we need to guarantee they've actually sent those travel reimbursements to the veterans. And anecdotally, we're hearing they're not always getting that. So that's, again, that's part of that feedback loop to make sure they're not getting paid for something they haven't actually done. So we look forward to hearing that down the road, what system you have in place to track that. Thank you.
It's my understanding, Mr. Kaufman, you do not have any more questions. Ms. Ratterwack, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Devlin, I want to come back to you. You didn't really answer my question, and that is, let me just rephrase it. How many cases got stuck in EMS?
I don't have that exact number off the top of my head, but I'll ask if Ms. Glenn has that exact number.
Yes, ma'am. We had about 45,000 cases get stuck in EMS at some point. We are now down to half a day's work in the EMS, and we are manually working those every day. And we expect to have that cleaned up by the next version of EMS that goes forward in December.
And ma'am, if I could add, the period of time was around March, April until around July, August. So there was that time period, and these cases, these exam requests, as they tried to move forward to the vendor and the reports coming back, they would hang up at different junctures, some for a day, some for several days or several weeks. And as Mary mentioned, we had patches and fixes that helped move those forward in batches. We're also doing it manually, and we're down to just a handful now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
And with that, thank you to the witnesses for participating in the hearing. And with that, I will also yield to Ranking Member for any closing statement that she might have.
Again, I want to thank the chairman for convening this hearing today. I want to thank GAO for their work in allowing us to do our sworn duty to be oversight, both as responsibility to the taxpayers and to the veterans who deserve to have timely, appropriate, and careful quality treatment. So again, I want to thank you for appearing today and our shared commitment to continue to do better. And again, whatever those metrics are, and metrics are important, they shouldn't be the ceiling for what we're doing for our veterans. It needs to be the floor, and we need to be continuously improving what we're doing, finding ways to do it faster, cheaper, better on behalf of veterans. So please understand, if what we are doing in terms of metrics or something else is impeding our effort to get closer to the kind of care that our veterans deserve, we need to hear from you. Don't wait for us to ask. Assume that is a constant request. What can we be doing smarter, better, more efficiently for taxpayers and serving our veterans better? And you're better positioned to know that, as our partners of the VSO are. So let's not lock in the technology, the practices of the past. Let's continue to look for better ways to do it. And with that, again, I want to thank my friend the chairman and thank all of you for joining us here today.
So I want to thank everyone for being here, both the witnesses and the members. And as earlier had been said, the complete written statements of today's witnesses will be entered into the hearing records. I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material. I also ask unanimous consent that the statement for the record submitted by the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States be included in the record. Hearing no objection, so ordered. This hearing is now adjourned.